They laughed when he stepped forward. The horse was a mess. Matted mane, bug-covered flanks, ribs like fence rails. "Put it down," someone muttered. But he saw something they didn't. And what followed unraveled a truth, buried beneath blood, betrayal, and the quiet kind of love no one expected to return. The air had gone still by the time they dragged him in. The sun hovered low over the fairground fence, casting long shadows across the cracked dirt. Most of the crowd had already started drifting toward their trucks, sipping lukewarm beer and brushing the dust off their jeans. It had been a long day: show ponies, barrel prospects, glossy-coated yearlings with paperwork thicker than a phone book. But this was different. The gelding didn't walk in. He stumbled, bug-covered, matted and rail-thin, with patches of hair missing and a halter held together with baling twine. His ribs stood out like prison bars. Flies clung to the crusted edges of his eyes. A child in the front row whispered, "Is he dying?" Her mother shushed her. "Last lot of the day," the auctioneer barked, trying to sound upbeat. "What we got here is, well, what we got here is a fixer-upper." Laughter rippled across the stands. A man near the rail cupped his hands around his mouth and called out, "Put him out of his misery." The horse flinched at the sound. In the back, half shadowed by the awning of the feed booth, Silas didn't move. Weathered boots, dust on his shirt, a face carved from years of sun and silence. He didn't come to buy anything, hadn't in years. He just showed up sometimes, like a ghost clinging to places time tried to forget. The bidding didn't start. It stalled. People shifted, uncomfortable. A few whispered. The auctioneer cleared his throat and tried again. "Do I hear 100? Nothing. 50? Still nothing." Then from the back row, a single hand rose, rough, browned by time, shaking just a little. The auctioneer paused, surprised. "All right, we got 50. But the murmurs drowned him out. Someone laughed. "What's Silas want with that bag of bones?" Another voice added. "He's gone soft. That horse won't make it a week." Silas didn't turn, didn't explain, just stepped forward, boots thudding quietly against the dirt. The crowd parted, unsure if they were witnessing pity or madness. He walked slowly to the rail, stopping a few feet from the gelding. The horse's head hung low, body trembling from more than just exhaustion. But when Silas whispered, low like wind through dry grass, the horse's ears twitched. One lifted, searching for the sound. Then, slow and unsure, he looked up, and in that moment, something passed between them. Not recognition, but permission. Silas gave a faint nod. "I'll take him," he said, quiet, final. The auctioneer, flustered, dropped the gavel. No one clapped, no one cheered. Only the sound of flies and the fading sun, slipping behind the metal roof of the arena, as the last lot of the day was claimed by the one man no one expected. Not for profit, not for sport, but because something in him had stirred, and maybe, just maybe, something in that broken horse had too. The whispers didn't wait for him to leave the ring. They started low, like wind through tall grass, then grew bolder, with every step Silas took beside the horse. "He's lost it," someone snorted from the benches. Another voice chimed in, loud enough to sting. "Old fools buying ghosts now." Laughter followed, not cruel exactly, just careless. The kind of laugh that doesn't think twice about what it lands on. But Silas had heard worse, lived through worse. He didn't look back, didn't break stride. He just walked, slow, steady, his boots scuffing dirt as he reached for the frayed lead rope. The gelding shied at first, pulling away, eyes wide with instinct. But Silas didn't yank or curse. He just stood there, letting the horse feel the space between them, letting it settle. The crowd watched, like they were waiting for a punchline. Silas took a step closer. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, barely above a breath. More to the wind than the horse, really. Not again. The gelding blinked, one ear twitched, another step, and then, so faint it might have been imagined, the horse shifted his weight toward the man. Just a flicker, a lean. A boy near the fence frowned. "Did he just?" His father scoffed. "It's just nerves. That horse's got nothing left." But Silas knelt slowly, reaching into his coat pocket, pulling out something wrapped in cloth, a single piece of apple, small, soft, forgotten at the bottom of a lunch sack. He held it out, palm open. The gelding didn't move, not at first, then nose twitching, bugs scattering. He reached out and took it, lips brushing the edge of Silas's hand. Silas didn't smile, he didn't gloat, he just nodded once, as if to say, "I see you." The crowd had gone quiet now, unsure if they were witnessing something real or just a fluke wrapped in sentiment. Silas rose, slow and stiff. His knees weren't what they used to be, but his eyes, they hadn't changed. Still clear, still searching. He touched the gelding's neck. The horse didn't flinch, didn't bolt, just stood there, bones sharp under skin, bugs still clinging. But something had shifted, not enough to call trust, but enough to call the beginning of it. Behind him, the crowd was already losing interest, turning away, shaking their heads. But Silas didn't need their approval. He wasn't there for applause. He was there for whatever this was, this quiet, broken thing that hadn't given up completely. And as he led the horse from the ring, slow and careful, no one noticed the way the gelding kept glancing at him now, not fearfully, but like he was starting to wonder if maybe, just maybe, this man wasn't like the rest. The gate groaned as Silas pushed it open. His truck rolled slow through the weeds, gravel crunching under tires that hadn't felt the weight of a trailer in a long time. The place looked the same, like time had wandered off and forgotten to come back. Fence posts leaning, barn roof patched with rusted tin, wild grass climbing the side of the old tack shed, but it was home. He parked beside the paddock and cut the engine. For a moment there was only silence, not the peaceful kind, the heavy kind, the kind that wraps around a man when he's alone long enough to forget how to speak out loud. He opened the trailer door. The gelding stood still, as if unsure the ride was truly over. Dust clung to his coat. His legs were shaking, but his eyes were watching, always watching. Silas clicked his tongue gently. "Come on now." The horse stepped out slow, like every joint ached. Silas didn't rush him, just led him to the small corral near the barn, unlatched the gate, and let him wander. Not much grass, but enough. He filled a trough, poured feed into an old tin pan, then leaned against the fence and watched. "Name's Ash," he said quietly. "'Cause that's what you came from, ain't it? Burned down, but still here." Ash didn't respond, but he didn't flinch either. Later, as the sun dropped behind the cottonwoods, Silas brought out a curry comb and a worn bristle brush. He stepped into the pen slow, giving the horse time to move. Ash didn't, so Silas got to work. The filth came off in sheets, sweat crust, dried blood, layers of grime from too many nights without shelter. Bugs scattered with every stroke. More of the animal beneath began to show. Chestnut, though dulled, skin stretched tight over bone. Scars too, some small, some not. And then, something else. Near the left flank, under a thick patch of dried mud, Silas felt a ridge. He froze, brushed again. Mud crumbled away, revealing a mark. Faint, almost lost to time, but it was there. A brand. His chest tightened. It wasn't possible. Not that one. Not here. He stared, the comb loose in his hand, lips parting like he might say something, but nothing came. His fingers hovered over the mark, tracing its curve, like a man trying to wake a dream he thought he'd buried. "God help me," he muttered. "Where'd you come from, boy?" Ash didn't move, just stood there, quiet and breathing steady. And Silas, who hadn't believed in fate for 2 decades, felt the first chill of something rising in his gut. Recognition, and with it, a memory he had tried his whole life to forget. The rain came that night, not hard, just enough to rattle the tin roof and stir the dust back into mud. Silas didn't sleep. Couldn't. He sat at the kitchen table, an old lantern hissing beside him, eyes fixed on the wood grain like it might spell out the answers he didn't want to ask. Outside, Ash stood in the shelter of the lean-to, head low but steady. Every so often, he'd shift his weight or swat his tail, but mostly he just watched the window, watched Silas, like he knew something was coming. In the corner of the room, behind the firewood bin, sat a chest covered in a tarp and years of silence. Silas hadn't touched it in over a decade, didn't want to, but now he couldn't not. He pulled it out with both hands, coughing as the dust rose. The latch creaked open. Inside, a stack of old documents, photos with curled edges, vet records faded to yellow, even a few rosettes from shows long forgotten. But it was the ledger at the bottom that mattered. thick, leather-bound, stamped with the seal of an operation that once meant everything. Silverbrook bloodlines. He flipped through slowly, fingers trembling, and then he found it. A sketched version of the brand, the same one burned faint into Ash's flank, like a ghost refusing to fade. Damn it, he whispered. Silverbrook had bred champions, quarter horses with fire in their chests and lightning in their feet. Silas had trained a few back in the day, knew them by name, but then the fire came. Late summer, dry season, a lightning strike, they said. The barn lit up like paper, and half the breeding stock was lost. What wasn't burned was sold in quiet deals, no questions asked. The records stopped, the bloodline disappeared, or so he'd believed. But now, Ash wasn't just a rescue, he was a question, a survivor, possibly the last living thread in a legacy someone had tried hard to erase. Silas ran a hand through his hair, heart pounding. He remembered the night he heard about the fire, how nobody wanted to talk about it after. Too fast, too clean, too quiet for a tragedy that big. And now, he was staring at proof that something survived, something someone didn't want found. He stood slowly, carrying the ledger to the window. Ash looked up at him through the rain. "You don't even know who you are, do you?" he said. But deep down Silas suspected he did, and that terrified him more than anything, because bloodlines don't just disappear, they're buried, hidden, and every ghost eventually comes looking for the truth. The rumors started by Tuesday. Small towns don't need much kindling. A bug-covered gelding, a washed-up trainer, a brand that didn't quite fade. It was enough. By the end of the week, the feed store was buzzing, and folks who hadn't said Silas's name in years were suddenly saying it with curiosity instead of pity. He ignored them, kept his head down, worked slow, steady, clearing muck, brushing out Ash's coat, watching the ribs recede and muscle try to find its way back. But the knock on Friday wasn't from a gossip. It was Josie Lambert. She was 30-something, sharp-eyed, and didn't waste time on polite hellos. Grew up around barrels and bred her own line of reiners now. Silas had trained her father's horses back when she was just a kid with straw in her braids. He hadn't seen her in years. She stepped out of her truck, arms crossed, sunglasses perched on her head. "Heard you pulled something half dead out of Marrowbend," she said. "Mind if I take a look?" Silas didn't answer right away, just gestured toward the paddock. Ash was grazing near the far rail, coat still rough, but his stance had changed, less guarded, like he finally believed the ground wouldn't vanish under him. Josie leaned on the fence and squinted. "He's not what I expected." Silas shrugged. "Me neither." He clicked his tongue, and Ash looked up, walked over without hesitation. No halter, no lead, just choice. Josie's brows lifted. "Well, damn." He circled once in front of them. His movement was slow but balanced, shoulders loose, hind legs tracking clean. Josie narrowed her eyes. "Do that again," she murmured. Silas didn't speak, just gave a low whistle. Ash circled back, this time with a little more push from behind. A flash of suspension in the trot, a lift in the front end most horses didn't have. Josie stepped down from the fence. "That gait," she said under her breath. "Where'd you say he came from?" "I didn't," Silas replied. She didn't laugh, didn't joke, she just really looked, and for the first time in a long time, Silas saw that familiar tilt in a horsewoman's head, the one that means I know what I'm seeing, even if I don't understand it yet. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" Silas asked quietly. Josie didn't answer right away. She ran a hand through her hair and exhaled. "I'm thinking that ain't a backyard throwaway, and I'm thinking you need to be real careful who hears that brand still visible." Silas nodded. Josie stared out across the field. "If he is who I think he might be, you've got more than a horse. You've got a story someone tried hard to bury." And for the first time in years, Silas felt it too, that slow shift in the wind before everything changes. The days got quieter, but not calmer. Ash was eating now, not greedily, just steady, like he finally believed the next meal would come. His coat began to shine in patches, soft around the muzzle, a little fuller near the withers. But as the filth faded, the scars showed themselves. One just below the girth line, long curved, not from wire or accident, something cleaner, intentional. Another, higher on the haunch, raised and ridged, like an old burn. Silas didn't speak of them, he just took to brushing slower in those spots, not with pity, with memory. Josie came by more often now, said it was to check Ash's progress. But Silas knew better. She'd seen something, and once a trainer sees it, they can't unsee it. One afternoon, she pulled a plastic vial from her vest. DNA, she said. Hair from the tail, clean root, took it when he was dozing. Silas raised a brow. Don't look at me like that, she added. You want answers or not? He didn't argue. She sent it off that night, quiet about it. Only one lab still had access to the old studbook she needed, the same one that had handled a stallion named King Below Zero, a Rainer legend Josie had trained years back. The bloodline had vanished after a barn fire in 04. Everyone thought the line was done, but Josie wasn't so sure anymore. 2 weeks passed. Ash filled out more. The way he carried himself began to change. More reach, more rhythm, like his bones were remembering who they'd once been. Silas noticed it in the mornings, the way the horse trotted to the gate before feed, light on his feet, proud. Then the email came. Josie pulled into the drive, truck still idling, laptop open in her lap. Silas met her before she got out. She turned the screen toward him. Partial match, she said. 62% similarity to Below Zero. He frowned. What's that mean? It means we're close, she said. But there's a piece missing. The dam, or something's off in the record. Silas leaned on the truck bed, jaw tight. Josie hesitated. There's one more person who might know. Vernon Price. The name hit like a nail through the boot. Vernon had been the breeder back then, ran the farm, kept the records, closed up shop the day after the fire and disappeared. Last Silas heard, he was living 3 hours east, off a gravel road no one used anymore. You think he'll talk? Silas asked. Josie shrugged. Don't know, but if anyone knows what was bred or buried that night, it's him. Silas stared out at Ash, who was grazing peacefully beneath the oak tree, calm, strong, carrying something in his bones that didn't want to stay hidden. All right, Silas said, voice low, then I guess it's time I paid a ghost a visit. The gravel popped under the tires as Silas eased the truck down the winding road, past fields gone to seed and barns that leaned like tired men. 5 hours of silence had given him too much time to think about Ash, about that brand, about the night the Silverbrook barn burned and everything that followed. The house came into view, small, slumped, but lived in. Smoke curled from a metal chimney. An old gelding grazed in the side pasture, sway-backed but clean. Someone still cared for this place. Silas cut the engine. For a long while he just sat, hands gripping the wheel, heart thudding with something between dread and unfinished business. Then he stepped out. The door creaked open before he could knock. Vernon Price hadn't aged so much as hardened, hair white, eyes sharp behind gold-rimmed glasses. He looked Silas up and down, no surprise in his gaze. I figured it'd be you, he said, voice like dry rope. Silas nodded once. We need to talk. Vernon didn't answer, just stepped aside. Inside the house was plain. Wood stove, bookshelf, a table cluttered with old invoices and legal pads. On the wall, photographs, foals, champions, ribbons, ghosts in frames. Vernon poured 2 mugs of coffee without asking, and sat. You found him, didn't you? He said flatly. Silas didn't respond. Didn't think it'd come back, Vernon added. Thought the fire took care of it all. Silas's jaw clenched. You knew there was a survivor. Vernon sipped his coffee. I knew what I pulled from that barn was breathing. Barely. The foal was fresh, days old. Dam gone. Sire dead. Papers turned to ash. You hit him, Silas said. I protected him. Vernon snapped. I saw what was coming. The lawsuits, the vultures, everyone wanting a piece of a broken line. So I made him disappear. Silas stared, disbelief thick in his throat. You didn't think I deserved to know. You, Vernon laughed bitterly. You walked away, left the business, left the rest of us to mop up what was left. I blamed myself, Silas said. We all did. The silence cracked between them like a brittle plank. He's at my place now, Silas said, voice lower. Name's Ash. Vernon blinked. For a flicker, something softened in his face. Fitting. He's got the blood, Silas added. You know it. I know it. Vernon nodded slowly. I kept the swab from his dam. Locked it away. Didn't dare send it in. Give it to me, Silas said. He deserves to know who he is, and I deserve to face it. Vernon stared a long time. Then he rose, walked to a drawer, and returned with a small envelope, yellowed, unmarked. You sure? he asked. No, Silas admitted. But I'm not running anymore. As he drove away, envelope on the seat beside him, the sun dipped low behind the trees. And for the first time in years, Silas didn't feel like he was escaping. He felt like he was returning. The Marrowbend Fall exhibition wasn't much. Folding chairs, dusty banners, kids selling lemonade beside worn fences. But folks came anyway. Ranchers, breeders, retirees with coffee in thermoses, and opinions they wore like belt buckles. It was tradition, and tradition had teeth. Silas hadn't planned to enter. He never liked crowds. But Josie pushed, said it was time to stop hiding. Just walk him in, she'd said. Let him be seen. So he did. No fanfare, no silver tack or braided mane, just a plain halter, an old lead, and a man who hadn't stood inside a show ring in 2 decades. They waited near the warm-up pen while kids on ponies and slick geldings circled nearby. Someone squinted over the rails. Ain't that the bug horse Silas pulled from Marrowbend? Another laughed. Looks better, still rough. Silas didn't flinch. Ash stood beside him, calm, quiet, stronger now. The scars still showed, but so did the muscle beneath. The fire in his chest wasn't loud. It just burned steady. Their number was called. They stepped into the arena. The moment his hooves hit the dirt, the air shifted. Not dramatically, not all at once, just a slow turn, like wind changing direction. Heads swiveled, conversations dimmed. No one expected much, but Ash didn't move like a rescue. He moved like he belonged. Silas walked him in a circle, loose lead, no pressure. Ash arched his neck slightly, ears forward, hindquarters engaging just enough to make people look twice. From the announcer's booth, a pause. Then next up, number 43, Ash handled by Silas Grady. Someone in the stands muttered, that can't be right. But it was, and when Ash trotted down the far side of the ring, smooth, powerful, lifting with that impossible softness, someone near the rail gasped. I've seen that gait before, a woman whispered. Years ago, at Silverbrook. Another voice cut in, sharp, that line's gone. Are you sure? People leaned forward now. Josie stood behind the rail, arms folded tight, watching every step. She saw it too. The way Ash floated, not forced, not trained, inherited. The judges didn't speak, just scribbled. Whispers grew louder. That's below zero's stride. No, couldn't be. That horse burned. But the truth moved through the arena, like a current. It was in the way Ash handled space, how he listened without being led, how he knew. You couldn't fake that. Silas stopped at the center, turned Ash in a quiet pivot. The stall went dead silent. Not because he was the flashiest, but because in that moment, every trainer, every breeder, every old cowboy who thought they'd seen it all, recognized something in that horse. Legacy, not polished, but undeniable. And as Silas led Ash from the ring, someone stood, then another, not for applause, but respect, because sometimes the past doesn't stay buried, sometimes it walks right back into the arena. The folder hit the table with a sound heavier than paper should make. Silas didn't look at it right away, just stared at the steam curling from his coffee. Across from him, Josie sat still, her hands folded tight, knuckles pale. There was no small talk today. Vernon kept more than a swab, she said quietly. He kept the truth. Silas finally looked up. Josie opened the folder and slid out 3 sheets. The first was a breeding certificate, worn but legible, a match between Below Zero and a mare named Emberless, registered just 4 days before the Silverbrook fire. The second, a vet report, folder born healthy, male, markings matched. The third, a fire investigation summary, one Silas had never seen. It wasn't lightning, Josie said. That's what they told everyone. But the report Vernon kept, it shows accelerants. Back barn, locked stalls. Silas's jaw clenched. Someone lit it. Josie nodded. Why? Money. Lawsuits were coming. Ownership disputes. There were whispers a rival breeder wanted to buy Below Zero and split the stock. Someone figured if they couldn't have it. She let the sentence trail off. Silas stared down at the birth certificate. Ash, born into flames. Hidden under ash, raised in silence, and never meant to be found. He's the only one left, Josie said. Everything else burned or sold off so deep, no one kept track. But Vernon, he kept these, buried them, maybe out of guilt, maybe fear. But it's all here. Silas brushed his fingers over the paper. It felt too clean for what it carried. They erased him, he said, voice thick, tried to wipe him out like he was nothing. But he made it, Josie replied. He survived, and somehow, you found him. Silas thought back to the auction ring, the flies, the stares, that first twitch of the ear when he spoke. He hadn't found Ash. Ash had found him. What now? Josie asked. Silas folded the documents and slipped them back into the envelope. His hands shook as he sealed it. Now we tell the truth, he said, and we protect him. Not because he's rare, not because he's valuable, but because someone tried to bury him, and he still rose. Outside, Ash stood near the fence, head lifted to the breeze, mane just starting to grow long again. He didn't know the weight of what he carried, or maybe he did, maybe he always had. Some legacies don't scream, they whisper, they wait, and when the world forgets them, they find their way back in scars, in silence, in the eyes of a horse no one expected to matter again. But Silas knew better now. Ash wasn't a rescue, he was a reckoning. The fog lay thick over the pasture, curling around fence posts, and blurring the line between earth and sky. Everything felt quieter in that hour before the sun broke through, like the world was holding its breath. Silas stood near the edge of the field, one hand resting on the top rail, the other cradling a tin mug gone cold. He hadn't touched the coffee, didn't need to, not this morning. Ash stood just beyond the fence, his coat dark against the pale mist, ears flicking softly at the sound of waking birds. He was stronger now, filled out, steady on his feet, but still gentle in that way only horses who've known pain can be, not skittish, just aware, just alive. Silas stepped through the gate, the latch clicked shut behind him, but Ash didn't move, just turned his head slowly, watching, waiting. They all walked away from you, Silas said, voice low, gravel rough from sleep and memory, left you for dead. Paperwork vanished, names erased, brand nearly gone. He walked closer, boots sinking softly into the dew-soaked earth. But not me. Ash blinked, took a step forward. No lead rope, no command, just trust. Silas reached up, fingers brushing the side of the gelding's face, rough hands meeting smooth bone. Ash lowered his head, resting it gently against the old man's shoulder, and stood still, not because he had to, because he chose to. For a long time they just stood there, no words, no movement, just breath and silence, and the slow weight of something neither of them could name. Silas exhaled, a long breath he didn't realize he'd been holding for 20 years. I thought I was done, he murmured, thought I was just a ghost walking fences, waiting to fade out. Ash didn't flinch, didn't shift, and in that moment, Silas understood what had brought him back to that auction yard, why he couldn't walk away when everyone else had. Because some souls recognize each other, even through mud and scars and silence. He wasn't there to save Ash. Ash had come to save him, from regret, from forgetting, from the man he'd let the world take away. He leaned his forehead against Ash's, letting the quiet wrap around them both like a prayer. The morning mist curled around their legs. The sun was just beginning to push through, gold light breaking across the field in slivers. Silas closed his eyes, and for the first time in decades, he didn't feel broken. He felt chosen, not because he was perfect, but because he stayed, because sometimes the ones we almost lost are the ones who find us. If this story stirred something in you, if you believe in second chances, in silent bonds, in legacies that refuse to stay buried, subscribe to Horse Tales, with a divine forgotten horses and their untold truths back to life. Hit the like button. Tell us in the comments what part of Ash's journey moved you the most, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this, where redemption doesn't shout, it whispers.